Yeah, we're looking forward to hearing a little bit more about what's in the settlement. Of course, the amount that Dominion was seeking was $1.6 billion. These are the Dominion attorneys, is what we're hearing. We're hopefully about to learn where they landed and what is part of this agreement.
Justin Nelson from Sussman Godfrey, proud counsel for Dominion Voting Systems. The truth matters. Lies have consequences. Over 2 years ago, a torrent of lies swept Dominion and election officials across America into an alternative universe of conspiracy theories, causing grievous harm to Dominion and the country. Today's settlement of $787,500,000 represents vindication and accountability. Lies have consequences. The truth does not know red or blue. People across the political spectrum can this even of most
Our
apologies, to our viewers
challenging
there.
connection there, it seems. But we were hearing from Dominion Voting Systems attorneys talk about the fact that they've reached a settlement with Fox.
It sounds like $787 million.
Just under $1 billion.
Right, less than the 1.6 that they were hoping for, but interesting to hear them describe it as a victory for the truth. The attorney there said the truth matters. Lies have consequences, accused Fox News of perpetuating a torrent of lies that led to an alternative universe of conspiracy theories.
And not just the implications of what Dominion Voting Systems was accusing Fox News of doing are not exclusive to the United States, to the consequences to a democratic process that is healthy, to a democracy that survived, to an informed population, but also in other countries, because they were involving in these lies and these conspiracy theories other governments, speculating about the effectiveness of these voting machines, which could be for this private company used in elections around the world. And so not just injecting doubt into the American democratic system, but also beyond that in the world. Jessica, I want to bring you back in because I think we need to go a little bit back to the beginning. And we were talking about the high bar that exists for a defamation lawsuit to succeed. Those of us who have studied journalism and who went to study media law understand that. But talk to us a little bit about what this lawsuit was about, why the high bar, and just what does the First Amendment play in all of these? Can a cable network get away with spreading lies? And perhaps, I don't know if I'm putting you a little bit here to the test, but the difference between a cable network and I don't want to take you back to the Telecommunications Act of 1996, but broadcast, the difference between the responsibility that us news organizations have to the public and the significance that this lawsuit and this settlement might play into all of that.
It's interesting that you said the responsibility of news organizations, because I think that's exactly right. On the other hand, we give news organizations, for I think reasons that make all the sense in the world, a lot of latitude, because we don't want you to be chilled into not reporting something and depriving me of information because you accidentally repeat a newsworthy allegation, but in fact, it is not true. Mm-hmm. And so that, I think, is to your broader question about, the First Amendment implications and First Amendment concerns here. And defamation, let's be clear, defamation allows us to punish people for what they say. And that's why we talk about the First Amendment when it comes to defamation, because what we're saying here, let's go down the elements, that there is a false statement. It's a false statement of fact, not pure opinion, that it's about the plaintiff. In this case, it's about Dominion, that it causes Dominion harm. And then here's the thing that really protects First Amendment interests. that it is made with actual malice if we're talking about a public figure. And that actual malice standard dates back to 1964 and a Supreme Court decision dealing with the New York Times, where they basically said, okay, there's some speech that is so problematic that we can punish it, but only, here's our safety valve, only if the people know it's false or entertain, quote, serious.
It looks like we've got the presser back up.
Yeah,
so
we
let's
have the
listen
signal back and healthy. Let's listen into these conclusions from the attorneys.
As I was preparing today to give the opening that I never got to give, I was reminded of the hell that the Dominion employees went through and continue to go through to this day. Money is accountability, and we got that today from Fox. But we're not done yet. We've got some other people who have some accountability coming towards them, and I'm very proud of the team from Sussman Godfrey that has worked tirelessly for this case, and we'll move right on to the next one. Thank you.
Did you get any retractions? Did you get any retractions?
Anything else as part of this settlement? Is there anything else in this settlement besides money?
Davita Brooke, Sussman Godfrey. One last thank you, which is really to all of you for being with us on this journey. We appreciate what you've done to help us and to help expose what we were able to discover over the course of this process. And so thank you, and we'll see you at the next one.
Counselors, anything else in this settlement besides money?
Any retractions? Any retractions?
That's all for now. Thank you.
What you're hearing is reporters asking precisely the question that we were just discussing with Jessica Levinson, whether or not there is more than money that is part of this settlement, whether or not we're going to hear those figures who there was plenty of evidence that was already out there showing that they knew they were lying when they were propagating these conspiracy theories. The lawsuit didn't move forward. They settled. We don't know what else is in it. But Jessica, what else could be part of this settlement, and why wouldn't the attorneys want to address that question that is in all of our minds right now?
I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you, because seemingly they did agree on a settlement. It wasn't a tentative settlement because they had a jury waiting. They had a jury where they ordered lunch for the jury. The jury thought for 2 hours, we're about to go sit down for the first day of a 6-week trial that everybody for the rest of my life is going to want to interview me about. And so why they were so cagey, I mean, they clearly heard the question of, and was there anything else in the settlement? And so at this point, we may not know until we hear something either from Fox or we hear something from Fox hosts. But it is fascinating, to say the least, that they, aggressively dodged that question.
Yeah, and in fact said money is accountability, as though it is just the $787 million that represents their admission of wrongdoing. Scott MacFarlane, our congressional correspondent, who's there in the courtroom, reports that the Dominion CEO said that Fox has admitted telling lies, but whether or not that actually manifests in an on-air apology, in any of those hosts
what other conditions?
owning that we don't know, and specifically do not know based off of that press conference.
And speaking of owning, they also mentioned that there are others that now they're going to pursue, that there are other lawsuits that this firm is representing Dominion Voting Systems on. I understand one of those is OWN, this other cable network. But Jessica, do you know a little bit more about who is next? Who is on that list that Dominion attorneys are addressing or saying that they're going after?
I think it is OWN, and I think you're right. It's based on essentially the same idea, which is that Dominion was defamed because they were accused of throwing votes from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. And the settlement, in a lot of ways, I think puts the wind at their sails, where they are able to say, look, we just got Fox News to apparently admit to spreading lies, although I'm not sure that's a huge admission, given that the judge had already concluded that these were lies, and we know who said them. It was Fox News and Fox hosts. So it's interesting that you heard
and their guests too.
And excuse me, exactly, and their guests. And one of Fox's defenses was to try and say, well, no, that was just our guess. And the judge didn't buy that, really. And so
there's plenty of opinion there. But there, yeah, go ahead.
So Jessica, one thing that I'm just trying to understand, and we're getting the Fox statement on this, and we'll share that with our viewers in just a second. Does the judge have any say in the terms of the settlement, or is this something that is completely worked out by the two entities, Dominion and Fox News, and they can completely decide, and the judge really has no say except to say, all right?
So, I mean, the judge will look and see, does the settlement violate the law or public policy? And barring that, then this is really up to the two parties. So this is not like, for instance, a plea deal in criminal court where the judge has to make sure that the defendant really understands what they're pleading to, that they've been informed of all of their rights. Obviously, we're not talking about taking away somebody's freedom here. We're talking about a private contract for the exchange of money. And so
Jessica,
a judge's role in that.
I apologize. I want to cut you off because we've lost Scott twice. Before I want to make sure that we seem to have him on the phone. Scott, what is the latest? We understand that there is a statement from Fox News. Talk to us about what happened today in that courtroom.
Well, the third time is the charm. Let's be clear. Here we are outside the courthouse in Wilmington. The attorneys for Dominion have just announced it was a $787 million settlement of a $1.6 billion defamation suit, nearly half the amount. They would not answer when I asked repeatedly if there's another component to this settlement besides the money. Is there a retraction or an apology or a written word from Fox? They wouldn't answer, so that question remains out there. But we can say that this didn't come as a shock after the 95-minute delay of resuming a trial after a lunch break and after the judge had said he was going to be diligent about staying on time and remaining punctual and being efficient. So it was clear something was up. We saw heavy foot traffic of the attorneys from the courtroom to these two small meeting rooms next to the courtroom, back and forth, back and forth. It was almost a capacity in these small meeting rooms as conversations were taking place. The attorneys walked in to the judge, did a brief off-microphone sidebar, then the judge announced the case is resolved. Both parties thanked the court for their time, and the judge thanked the jury for their service, saying they may have, if not certainly have, induced this resolution to the settlement.
Scott, I don't know if you can hear us. I understand that there's a bit of difficulty, but we're hoping that you might be able to share Fox News's statement, if you could.
We're awaiting a statement from Fox News. Pardon me if I'm behind dealing with the influx of statements. Fox News avoided the opportunity to speak to cameras as their attorneys walked out of the courthouse. So we expect a statement from Fox News if it hasn't come in the last few minutes. But they did not take the opportunity of a national press corps and an international press corps inviting them over to the microphones to speak after this resolution and settlement was announced by the judge.
We do have one statement here from Fox News Media after announcing that the settlement was reached and making the announcement. The network said, "We are pleased to have reached a settlement of our dispute with Dominion Voting Systems. We acknowledge the court's rulings finding certain claims about Dominion to be false, certain. This settlement reflects Fox's continued commitment to the highest journalistic standards. We are hopeful that our decision to resolve this dispute with Dominion amicably instead of the acrimony of a divisive trial allows the country to move forward from these issues."
Yeah, it does not sound, based off of that statement, that Jessica's earlier thoughts that maybe we would hear Fox News hosts say that we lied or anything like that was actually part of the settlement deal.
What are you hearing in this statement, Scott? What comes to mind? You've been covering this for a while.
Well, it was a spectacle, even without a trial. This captured international notoriety, and clearly there was some risk and leverage on both sides. As the opening statements were on the schedule for 1:30 Eastern time today, Dominion was putting its fate in the hand of 12 jurors and 12 alternates. Fox News faced the prospect of its biggest stars and its boss testifying before an international press corps. So both sides carried risk and both sides carried leverage. But if you're talking about what the actual last minute was, it wasn't the gavel banging at 9 a.m. Eastern when the judge concluded jury selection. It wasn't Monday when the judge postponed proceedings 24 hours. The final moments were just before opening statements were to begin at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, and that's when it appears there was a breakthrough in discussions that ended up just before 4 p.m., ending with a settlement of this massive case for nearly half of what Dominion was seeking, $787.5 million out of a $1.6 billion lawsuit.
I want to go back to Jessica Levinson now that we've gotten that additional bit of insight and color from Scott. And given that we've now read that statement from Fox News on the settlement, it seems, Jessica, that it sounds like there's a bit of their spin on it. We heard from Dominion, of course, that they said that money is accountability, that they're admitting that they lied. But from the statement from Fox, they seem to walk away from that, instead saying the settlement reflects Fox's continued commitment to the highest journalistic standards.
And they point that it's certain claims.
Certain claims, right? They're walking away from a lot of this.
Yeah.
What's your take on that, and how does this potentially help Dominion as they go after these additional claims?
So my takeaway here is that I don't think we're going to get apologies from Fox News hosts and Fox guests because, again, it's exactly what you just said. I think we really hear Fox kind of trying to move away from this. I think that would make sense in terms of why we just heard a few moments ago from Dominion and not Fox. I think it makes sense in terms of why Dominion's lawyers had deaf ears when journalists screamed basically or yelled in a nice way, are there any other terms to the settlement? Because now I suspect the answer is probably no. And it's also why they said that the money is enough here, that the money indicates that there was fault. And so in this case, what happens for Dominion next? This is a good settlement. I mean, you could see it on the faces of the attorneys. I think they're happy with the outcome. And in terms of how much money they would have got if they would have won the case, that was where Dominion's case was weaker. Dominion had, I think, a very good case on liability and maybe not as good on damages. And so this, frankly, might be a very good outcome for Dominion. Now, they didn't have that moment where they have a verdict, but in terms of a client serving their, in terms of a lawyer serving their client, I think Sussman Godfrey can feel like they really did a good job here.
In every settlement, of course, that's the story. The person who's being sued, they will say it's not an admission of guilt. The plaintiff will say, look, it's an admission of guilt. I think the question here now is there are other defendants in this situation. It's going to be Owen and potentially others that this law firm, as they already said, will pursue. These lawsuits are already out there. What does this settlement tell you about what should be in the mind of those executives at that other network and anybody else who already has a pending lawsuit? What's the impact?
And of course, the Smartmatic lawsuit against Fox as well, and now at this point, it shows that Fox is willing to settle and that they are willing to settle for large amounts. And now with respect to the other lawsuits by Dominion, I think it gives us a little bit of a roadmap as to where those lawsuits will go and the type of strategies that they will pursue, and that they hope in those cases that they will be as successful, frankly, on summary judgment as they were here. Because let's remember, this case, while it was slated for 6 weeks, there really was only that one live issue of actual malice. And for Dominion, that's great news. And they're going to want to try and replicate that again in their other suits.
Yes, and the standout quote for me, the truth matters, lies have consequences, coming from the attorneys for Dominion. Jessica Levinson, Scott MacFarlane, thank you for helping us understand all of this breaking news. We will, of course, continue to monitor this story, and we'll have more of this at the top of the hour on Red and Blue.